Hello, and a warm welcome to the latest episode of the AI Edge podcast presented by Leena AI. Today, we have Dynatrace's Chief People Officer, Ms. Sue Quackenbush, who will join us as a guest. Thank you so much for doing this for us, Sue.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. To kick us off, tell us a bit more about what Dynatrace does and a bit about your role and what you do at Dynatrace.
So what Dynatrace does is basically unified observability and security. So we provide a platform that provides analytics and automation powered by causal AI. So Dynatrace has been in existence for 20 years.
Yes.
We've been publicly traded in the US for the last 5 years. And my role as Chief People Officer is really to focus on how do we, well, it's a couple things, but really how do we ensure we have the right talent, really focused on those roles that can capitalize on their skills so that we build product and provide solutions to our customers that wow our customers.
That makes sense, Sue. So tell us a bit more about the landscape of the companies. Like, how many people do you have? Where all are they placed? So we just have an idea. So the listeners have an idea of your presence globally.
Sure. So Dynatrace is absolutely a global organization. We have Dynatracers that are across 50 plus countries. The majority of our employees, we have over 5,000 employees. About 2/3 are outside of the US, a third in the US, and we keep expanding into different countries. So it's not stagnant. We keep moving and growing.
That's amazing to know. That's exactly what you always want. So let's get right to the meat of the podcast now. So, as a chief people officer, Sue, we've been hit with something we did not expect over the last 2 years, right? Like Gen AI is something that nobody expected. It just hit it when it did. And as a chief people officer, there are a lot of, I'm sure there are a lot of things that you're thinking about the future of work, right? Um, there are two aspects to this. The first aspect is, from an organization aspect, you want more adoption. Well, you have to be safe, but you want more adoption. You want to move fast because people might just companies might just die. Like there might be a Nokia moment for anyone in this industry at this point, right? But on the other hand as well, you have to be safe. And then the second thing is, how do you are empowering your own HR team to be more efficient and productive, and what are your thoughts around that, right? So kind of a two-part question. As a chief people officer, you have both the hats on. So tell us, how are you thinking about this from both of these perspectives, which is adoption of AI in the organization at large? How do you get that done? And the second is, how do you use AI to improve your own HR function?
Sure, absolutely. And it's a wonderful opportunity, right? So when you think about, and I'll flip it. So when you think about how do we use AI within HR, we're just at that beginning stage of thinking it through. I think there's a huge opportunity from an HR operations perspective to streamline, to ensure that when an employee has a question, they can get an answer, a very robust answer, quickly with the right context and the right information. I've my team and myself have been on this journey of really transforming the employee experience across Dynatrace. When I joined, our employee experience was consistently inconsistent. And a lot of that is because of how the company grew up, and we had multiple HR teams really focused on different areas. So we had multiples of things. We didn't really have a harmonized approach. We were more regionally or functionally siloed. And so we're in the messy middle or wonderful middle of a multi-year transformation where we're essentially re-architecting the employee experience around those key moments that matter. We're putting in a new service delivery model so that employees and managers and leaders can get information quick. We're harmonizing our approaches, and then we're putting in tools to support all of that. And where AI will come into is, how can we even make that process or that approach or that inquiry much more streamlined? and making sure it's accurate and up to date, because the current focus is you're harmonizing your approach, you're creating knowledge artifacts, you're putting it in a service delivery model, but we're constantly changing. And how do you keep it relevant? How do you keep it up to date? How do you keep it accurate? Forget, even with all of the different legislation that's changing, how are you keeping up with that? And so right now it's dependent on individuals. How can we bring AI in to really streamline that and help us so that we know we're giving right information at the right time? So that's one piece within the organization. The other piece, though, is, and I see this kind of crossing both lines, I think there's a huge opportunity from an AI perspective with regards to employee growth. So career growth and opportunity. And, we talk about career pathing and learning paths, but at the end of the day, it's an experiential plan for an individual to continue to fine tune and grow their skills, question and understand maybe what other avenues they can go down. And I believe that AI can really help pull in different facets of experiences and learning moments to help an individual craft and move forward. Because a lot of times people want to progress in their career, but really don't know where to go. And then the other thing is, too, some people might want to switch careers. I switched careers. I started off in corporate finance. Now I'm in human capital. Did I do it through a great plan? No. I mean, life happens and it changed. But boy, would it have been great to have some type of mechanism that can help me say, hey, you're making this pivot. Here are some of the key fundamentals. Here's how you navigate experiences. And I really do think there's a huge opportunity there from an AI perspective. The third piece, which I think is really going to be important for individuals, but also for companies, is how do we deploy resources to get work done? And what type of resources are we deploying? Human, digital resources. And I think there's a huge, companies need to start to think about this, because the next 5, 10, 15 years, that landscape of deploying a resource to get work done is going to be vastly different than what we do today. And all of our mechanisms have been built around a career framework, job architecture, role and responsibilities. It's been really tied into something that's very locked in, how we compensate, how you build a career path. And AI introduces a whole different way of doing this. And so how companies can really assess, how do I deploy resources? What resources am I deploying is something we all have to figure out.
No, I think that's amazing insight. I loved what you said about consistently inconsistent.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny how we work with a lot of customers doing exactly that, right? Like IDHR, finance, help desk automation, and I don't think somebody has been able to just like say the exact same thing in such simple words. Consistently inconsistent, but love it. I think Sue, you also made a very, very good point around the future of the workforce, right? Like it's going to be a mixture of probably humans and agents working together in the future. And some of the jobs that exist today, and it's actually a pretty interesting thing about, like, if you look at, I would go in and job, and you join the workforce as an entry level finance, and then you made your way up, and then you also pivoted towards human capital. But I think, and I'd love to know your thoughts about this, but I think that like some of those levels, especially the entry ones, might get automated very quickly. So essentially now this goes back to thinking, okay, you might be entering the workforce at a much higher level already on day one, right? So there's going to be a gap, right? So that gap of like 3 years of training, so you were learning and training on the job while doing those roles, right? Let's say, I'm just making things up, but let's say an AR analyst or an AP, because you said finance, that's why I'm giving those examples. But AR analyst, AP analyst, right? Maybe those don't exist in the next 2 years, right? So we need to kind of also think about how to kind of enter people at the third level without the knowledge of the first two. So I've been thinking about this lately. I'd love to know, like, what are your thoughts, and how do you see that progressing in the future?
Well, and I think it's a great question, and don't put me on the spot or anything, but I think that to answer your question, and we need to. It's almost, and I heard this term, you almost have to unravel the role. So you talk about AP or an analyst, unravel almost to in small increments of what skills and what really work is being done, right? And I've heard the term pixelate a role. So just take it all into the smallest components and figure out who is it, an agent doing it or is it a human doing it? But I think from a human's perspective, the skill sets that are going to be critically important. So there has to be a knowledge, right? Because there has to be an understanding, right, of the work that's being done. The individual may not be doing it, an agent may be doing it, but then it's the understanding of the work, but then it's the logic and the rationale and what individual will be able to add to that work to progress it. Right. So there has to be the human aspect of it. And quite honestly, when we think about what's critically important, strong communication, collaboration, simplification, being able to have strong change management, right? These are skill sets, leadership skill sets that are really we're going to have to double down on. Right. And we think about, how strong or not strong our communication skills are these days. A lot of times people communicate only through technology. They really don't know how to connect and build relationships and that collaboration. I think those are skills that are going to be really, it's almost like that old fashioned is brought back to say, well, wait a minute, there's a magic that happens in that human interaction that can't be replicated by an agent at this point. So we need to discover what those are to add it to what an agent can do.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's like, hey, whatever is in a job role that's repetitive and boring and probably very siloed, you take that away using agents, and everything else the human does, and probably we start training for that even earlier. Like maybe we got to change the curriculum, go back, change the curriculum in all through high school, and then even in college, just change the curriculum there, focus on the areas that need development so that they can actually enter at a higher level than at the entry level. And anyway, nobody really wants, like, you see, I've done those entry level like work as a CEO, you have to do everything. So I've done everything that like support requests, or it gets, at some point it gets mind numbing, right? So humans don't and should not be doing that work anyway. So you got to focus on just get that things that are like repetitive and mind numbing. You just automate them while investing more and more in skills that humans should be doing. I think
sorry to interrupt, but like strategic thinking, right? True strategic thinking, being able to really provide logic and understanding and rationalizing, and those are the skills, right? And then the holistic thinking. So here is a task, but what are the implications of that task if done right or done wrong, right? So it's all that rationale and strategic thinking that needs to be brought forefront, and the understanding of the why, right? The why behind the work. And, too often, like you said, you're in these entry-level jobs, you're learning the tactical, but not understanding maybe the strategic. And we need to start there, start with the why. And that's it's a different approach. I mean, also just more the beyond the siloed training that we do, right? It's real, it's almost a training on the organization and how it works, right? Or it's just a very different, it's a broader way of thinking than how we typically start out when we're learning entry-level roles. So, and I don't, this is just, we're just spitballing this, but this is something we really have to think about. And what are the barriers for us to even go down this path, right? And that's even, talk about change and change management and strong communications. I mean, it's going to take a lot of dialogue to really help pivot how we approach work.
I think that makes sense. So, and as a so in this dialogue that you're talking about, that there has to be a continuous dialogue on how this is going to happen. I think one of the stakeholders is also the people who are doing the work, right? Today. So as a chief people officer, and I'm very sure you would have experienced this, has someone come to you and said, hey, you know what, I don't know, I'm afraid whether AI is going to take my job. Has that happened to you already? And if yes, like what did you say to them, and how did you kind of handle that?
So no one has come and said, "Hey, AI is going to take my job." I mean, maybe it's not in our workforce that hasn't happened. I have heard in other colleagues and clients where people talk about, okay, AI is going to be a huge cost savings, and we're going to replace all of these roles, right? And so, and my response is, okay, what's the best outcome? How do you use AI to take the routine and make it automatic,
Yep.
and at its simplest form? And I know as AI progresses, there's going to be logic on top of that and thinking on top of that. But like, how do we use it so we're capitalizing on that efficiency that can be gained, that
Yeah.
automation that can be gained, and then really free up time for the strategic thinking, for the consultative work. And I'm thinking now from my team, from an HR perspective, really being able to have any kind of reporting or dashboarding or answers very quickly delivered, so that the business partner can work with their stakeholder and really talk about trends, implications, making those decisions, right? Too often we're spent creating the numbers or the trends or the data, where if that's done very quickly and securely and accurately, honestly, it's more about okay, what are we going to do with this? And how do we move forward, right? So I would say you're going to see a shift in the work from the tactical to the more strategic.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So like today, if HR business partners or just the people function overall spends a lot of time doing whatever operational work, you have the same talent, the same number of people, but they'll now be able to do 20 times of what they were doing earlier. Like uh, probably they were answering a lot of queries. You said, HR ops is a big area, so you cut that because that's just like routine, everyday, mind numbing, as I said earlier, right? So you take that away and you spend more time doing strategic work with every single one of your managers. I think that makes sense. And it also kind of touches really well with what you said earlier about personalized growth paths, right? That's impossible to do today. You have a 5,000 plus people organization. It's impossible to go and sit with every single person and keep updating it every 2 months, every 3 months, because the world is moving so fast. You got to keep updating it, right?
Right.
And you can't do that. It's not humanly possible. But probably with AI now, you can actually give that single consultant to every single person
Mhm.
and scale this across the organization.
Absolutely. And just, something that can be done when that individual wants to engage.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of times the learning or those learning opportunities are very controlled and set period of time. And it might be in the middle of a day when you have a million things going on, and you might do it because you're supposed to do it, but then can you retain it? Can you, you only have so much capacity to focus on, right? And with everything, the pace of work is very, very quick. So, having something that can really help you when you want to focus, I think you'll get much better gains.
That makes a lot of sense. So uh, I had initially mentioned about the two areas, right? Like one is AI in HR, which you very well kind of answered, and I'll summarize as HR ops is one big area. The second is growth paths, and the third is more on the lines of having the AI do the operational part of any role, right? So like thinking about how all of these organizations will now in the next 15 years have both humans and agents kind of do the work, right? So you mentioned like the scalability of human skills, saying that okay, let's look at every job role, see exactly what's happening. Like we need to know, let's do a job analysis or task analysis and figure out okay, where's time being spent, and then pixelate it as you said, and that see what can be done by an agent, and see what can the human is going to continue doing, right? So in that regard, Sue, like, do you think people, or people who are listening to this podcast should start thinking about this at a 2 year horizon? Like, is that a reality in 2 years, 5 years? Like, what's the time scale that you think this is going to be like really real?
I mean, I think it can be really real now.
Hmm.
I think it starts small. Really think, okay, is there a body of work? Is there a role associated with that body of work that could be done through an agent? And, I'm a big believer in piloting. So start small, pilot. You really look at it as we're testing to see how this works, because you're going to learn, right? We're all learning. And so I think you can start now. There's no reason not to. Assuming you're all within the, as an organization, working within your AI governance and things like that. But, really think about, hey, how can we test this, right? It's that curiosity. That curiosity will lead to that adoption, right? If there's a fear of this, you're not going to start. And I would rather say, let's look at this as an opportunity. Let's be curious and see, how can we test this out? Where can we start? But really start small.
Yeah, kind of sits well with what you said before, right? Like, in HR, you start with HR operations, because that's something which will, you know, it's an easy. Nobody wants to really, keep answering simple things again and again, same tickets. Nobody wants to keep doing that. So it's probably high ROI while also being very low risk, I guess, because like there's nothing much that can go wrong there, right? Of course, you have the benefits part of the house, where if you give a wrong answer, it's a big problem. But of course, we're gonna make sure that the employees also know that, hey, this is an experimental AI system, or this is an AI system. So no AI system is 100% accurate. So you should probably just like verify before you take any action, like change dependents or add people, like just or change your benefits. So of course you're gonna help them with do that, and then AI is gonna keep getting better and better every day. Is that what you mean? Like find areas where, like, you can have very high impact but also lower risk. Are there any other areas that you've seen apart from this that you think could be that for the HR listeners in your audience today?
So from an HR perspective, definitely HR ops, 100%.
Yeah.
I also do believe that there's an opportunity with regards to using AI from a recruiting perspective as well. And so is there a way to streamline some of so thinking about it on the actual process of recruiting and scheduling of, conversations, can this streamline and help, potentially make that faster and more efficient. We talked about career development, which I think would be a really fun one. And then the other one, and this was the resource deployment aspect. So I think that's more further out, because it would really require a strategic workforce plan, really understanding how work gets done, and can an agent do that work or not. And I think that's a little further out. But I do believe recruiting and onboarding can be another opportunity for AI to help streamline it and provide. The other thing too is providing information quickly so that someone can react to it, right? And so I'm not saying that an agent would take away 100% of the work, but if it can augment an individual so that they quickly can procure the information, and then an individual can say, "Yep, that is right. Let's go." I mean, it just helps. It just helps provide a more consistent experience, but also a streamlined experience.
Yeah, looking back, this is exactly what a lot of actually customers also do with Leena, for example. So they'll come in and say, hey, I want to reduce tickets by 70% in HR, IT, operations, and case management, right? But onboarding also, you mentioned onboarding, so is a big thing, because it's very cross application, right?
Yeah.
And more than that, it's more very cross functional, right? So it's cross application and cross functional in nature. So that means that the breakage can actually happen in any of the applications, any of the functions. And then generally HR is going to be held responsible for the lack of good experience, right? So I now thinking back after you've said it, I think that's why we see a lot of our HR, CHRO customers actually go for onboarding, because it is their responsibility, while it is very cross-functional and cross-application. It allows for you to patch experience in a really important moment that matters as well. I think that would make sense. If you were to bet on if you were to bet on something that we have not talked about, so we have talked about some things that we think that is already possible, technology is already doing it. If I was to ask you one use case or one thing that you think AI could do in the next 5 years, uh, for HR teams, let's make it simple for HR teams, right?
Our
What,
teams. Okay.
what would you want in the next 5 years AI to do for your team or for you that you don't think is possible today? What would that be?
Oh boy, that's a hard one. That's a great question. So coming from consistently inconsistent to providing experience that are robust and wow you, what can AI do in 5 years? I would say, for me personally, is how do you grab contextual information across different functions of the business, also pulling in external information, so that from a CPO or CHRO point of view, you're getting the latest, most robust contextual trends or information that you can react to, right? Because gosh, I belong to a lot of different associations. I have different CHRO organizations. I, pull from our data inside Dynatrace, but I'm the one pulling out, like trying to pull and piece this all together. And I think there's just because of the complexity of so much data out there and so much, how do we, AI could really help, I hope, that in 5 years, pull the right pieces of data to build the right informative whatever report or information that someone can really take and use, and knowing that it's something that this is it, this is where we are in this point of time in the greatest latest thinking, where we are from a company perspective, and okay, how does that formulate that future course of that organization? That would be pretty cool.
So it's like your own Robin, basically.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so actually very interesting, right? So you're basically saying that pull information externally, pull information internally, look at benchmarks, and come to Sue and say, "Hey, Sue, I think that we are underpaying our engineers in Poland because and these are three sources, and this is your internal workday / success factors, like whatever your HR is, data, and this is what I'm seeing." And someone who's like doing an AI which is doing this 24/7 365 for everything that you do today, right? Like is that what you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pay one, we grab a lot of information, but if you take that and take it down to this skill set, this and this body of work would be paid this way, because we pay by role, we don't pay by skill or by actual body of work. So take it to that next level where it's it is almost not piecemeal, but could get to that piecemeal answer, right? And but I was, I'm also thinking about, as you think about your company and the future strategy and future the opportunity that each organization has an opportunity in front of it, and how do you capitalize on that opportunity? And from a talent perspective, is there a way to really grab those key insights, information, either gathered both internally and externally in the organization, to help maybe give a better probability and guidance on what that next step is, right? Because I do think, with the world changing, I mean, look, we've been talking about this forever, but change is happening so much quicker than in the past. Disruption, I mean, we can go on and on about what's going on in the world. And I really believe it's like, how do we still chart and move forward in a way. And so to be able to pull information and really use AI to get that information to those decision makers, I think will be great.
I think I love it. I love your vision for the future, Sue. And hopefully, someone builds it. Hopefully, we build it at Lean AI. But you know, I think this has been amazing, and I wish you all the best and all the luck. I know you're doing a multi-year transformation, journey from the consistently inconsistent to consistently consistent, and great experiences. So I wish you the best, and hopefully I'll have you again sometime soon to talk, to give the audience an update on how is the transformation going, whether you were able to use AI in HR ops, and what are the ROI that you've already gotten, and maybe in recruitment and in other areas as well. So
Absolutely. I
thank you
would
so
love
much.
to.
Thank
Well,
you so much for doing this.
well, thank you for having me. And absolutely, it is a journey. And I do look forward to applying AI to help the journey go a little faster. So welcome it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. So